Hello, I'm Mark Schober. I teach physics and astronomy at Trinity School in New York City. I took my first modeling workshop in 1998, and since then I've led workshops in mechanics, the models of light, electricity and magnetism, and I've also served on AMTA's board. Now, I took my first modeling workshop in 1998, but that meant that it took a little while for me to actually figure out how to do modeling and get good at it. So one of the measures we physics teachers have often used is a test called the Forced Concept Inventory. And for me, it's been a nice way of just kind of tracking how students do from year to year. And so if we would look at the trajectory over my teaching career, perhaps that looks a little bit like this. I started off with very typical Forced Concept Inventory scores. And then there was a bump in my post-test scores from my students. And then things stayed pretty level. I was working with juniors in St. Louis, and then there was a switch to New York. I started working with 9th graders, and then I switched to another school and working with 10th graders, and my scores stayed very constant through all of those. And then at my current school, I changed something that gave me a second bump here, and I think that's worth talking about. This first bump, of course, this is the one is modeling. And so instruction based around modeling cycles and organizing our curriculum in terms of models makes a big difference in how students learn. But after years of a plateau and trying to do things that would help my students learn better, I was struggling to find some way to help them do better until this bump, and this is the bump I'd like to tell you a little bit more about. I changed the way I assess my students. So this bump is the one that occurred when I switched to what is widely referred to as standards-based grading, and I will also refer to it as assessment by learning objective. So we have all these great innovations in modeling instruction and how we engage student discussion, how we use whiteboards, how we use labs to drive the development of models. But I think something's missing. For all that innovative teaching, we also need to have something that's equally innovative in how we measure what students learn. Or maybe more importantly, how we assess where students' learning is and how we provide feedback that students can act upon to improve their understanding. The way that we do this is to make really clear objectives. What are the skills and content I want my students to know by the time they leave my class? By defining those objectives and communicating them clearly to students, we have a tool for giving a much more sophisticated kind of feedback to students. Instead of a points-based approach, where a point of understanding Newton's third law is completely interchangeable with a point of understanding, say, energy conservation, when we break things down and we give students feedback itemized by learning objectives, the students can better see where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and can identify the steps they need to further practice so they can further improve their understanding. While I initially started doing standards-based grading with my students as a way of improving their understanding, which turned out to be successful, there's been a lot of additional benefits that have come along the way. It greatly changes the kinds of conversations I have with my students. When a student in the past did poorly and they said, what can I do to improve my grade? Too often the discussion would go to, well, if you do better on the next test, then it'll do this to your average. And we were talking about numbers and averages and not physics. But with standards-based grading, where I have itemized objectives, and a student comes in and says, what can I do to improve my grade? We look at what objectives still need some more practice. And I sit down with them, we work on better learning a particular idea until they can demonstrate their understanding of that idea. So this has gone a long way to not only improve student understanding, but it changes the nature of how we work with one another in the classroom. Even more, I'm realizing how important this is for equity in my classroom and meeting all of the needs of my students. They may come in from very different backgrounds, and when I establish, here's the goal by the end of our course, and here are the routes to get there. Students may take different amounts of time or may have different routes to get there, but it helps to go and make sure that wherever a student comes in, there is a path to success for them in my class. For more about this, I would like to direct you to Joe Feldman's book, Grading for Equity, which goes into a good deal about the philosophy and why assessment in this way is just a much better approach if we're concerned about equity in our classrooms. In 2017, math teacher Manjula Nair and I began running summer workshops to help other teachers use standards-based grading in their classes. Over the years, we've developed a variety of resources, and I've written up some of those resources and put them on my website, modelingscience.org. And we've also used the resources that a number of other modeling bloggers have put out there that have been really helpful in framing our understanding of why we're doing SBG and how it benefits our students. I was very intrigued when I came across a book here during the pandemic called Going Gradeless. It's a book written by two New Jersey physics teachers, and the idea that they had that I really love was the idea of developing learning progressions. So instead of having a list of learning objectives, I compact that list and I organize them into increasing levels of sophistication of objectives. So motion can start off with, say, linear one-dimensional constant velocity motion, can move to accelerated motion, can move to projectile or circular motion where we move into 2 dimensions, and then it can go to even a more sophisticated level of synthesis, where those tools are combined with other principles for physics in order to solve even more sophisticated ideas. To conclude, I hope that I've piqued your interest in taking a look at standards-based grading. There's a variety of resources that are here for you to take a look at, and I hope that you'll get involved in the conversation. The modeling Discord has a channel specifically for standards-based grading, or you can join me and other modelers on Twitter as we take a look at aspects of standards-based grading and how we can use this not only to improve student learning outcomes, but also how to improve equity in our classrooms. Thank you for watching.